We're going to be covering several different things for you here with regards to passive investments in your IRA. My name is Alex Perny. I've been with Advanta here since the end of 2011. I started back doing accounting for clients, and now I graduated into actually investing for clients, and now I'm in my current position of education and new business development for Advanta IRA. I've been involved in almost 2,000 different individual investments for clients. So if you have a question regarding something that maybe doesn't fit into the mold of today's presentation, the likelihood that I've seen it is pretty good. I've been doing this for quite a while and have a good basis of information that I can help give to you if you have some questions specifically towards that. Please make sure that you fire off your questions in the chat box. I'll get to those as soon as I see them, or may wait a little bit to interject when there's a better point in the presentation. But please don't feel like you need to wait until the very end to ask any questions. If you do want to get in touch with me directly, please feel free to do so. My direct line and email are on the screen in front of you. I'll also put that up in the end of the presentation, but for those that maybe are just listening to this, I can be contacted at 727-754-9954 or A. Perny, that's P as in Paul, E-R-N-Y at AdvantaIRA.com. A quick disclaimer before we get started: Advanta IRA and our employees do not provide investment or advise on any financial product. All information and materials are for educational purposes only, and all parties are encouraged to consult with their attorneys, accountants, and financial advisors before entering into any type of financial investment. So a few things that I'd like people to take away from today. One are what are passive investments? What does that mean in the context of an IRA? How to stay compliant with your IRA investments. Now, the simplicity of some of these investments is fantastic. Their ability to generate passive income is amazing. But the last thing that you want to do is take something that is as amazing and as hands-off as some types of IRA investments can be, and then simply making your life harder by running afoul of the IRS. And then I also want to make sure people understand the purchase process. What does it mean from start to finish if you identify something that you'd like to invest in, if you do or don't have a self-directed IRA, and how that process works from beginning to end. A little bit about us. We're a self-directed IRA administrator that has been serving clients nationwide since 2004. We like to pride ourselves on our customer service. So if you do open an account with us, you will always have a dedicated account manager. So your single point of contact with us is always more of a concierge based than calling into a call center. We like to really make sure that if you're doing something, especially that is self-directed, that you have that high level of customer service that will really make the sub as easy as possible. Now, for some people, the main barrier to understanding this is that, what is a self-directed IRA essentially, and why haven't you heard about it? Because most of the time, IRAs are administered by large banks and investment brokers who offer a very limited portfolio of what you can invest in. Now, they may offer you the ability to invest in any security that is traded on a certain exchange or any type of ETF or mutual fund that they sell, but they don't really give you true diversity to be able to invest outside of a securities market. They won't let you buy a piece of real estate at Charles Schwab. They won't let you issue someone a mortgage at Fidelity. So that's where Advanta comes in, is with the specialized service and knowledge to allow for those type of passive investments within your IRA. And when I say IRA, or we say self-directed IRAs, that's really kind of just a small portion of exactly what we do. Now, if you have Ted, I see your question. Maybe if you could specify more specifically what the actual investments that you're looking at are. The question of the difference between appropriate legal investments for a Roth IRA versus a traditional IRA. It's really just going to depend on, really what you would like to invest in. If there's something more specific, maybe towards the tax reporting portion of that, or taxation or pre or post tax type contributions, let me know. I think there might be more to that question. But when we say self-directed IRA, we're really kind of referring to any type of tax qualified plan, and they are varied, and there are a lot of different options for you. Most of the time, people will think of the traditional IRA. it's a tax deferred account, meaning that you got a deduction for adding money in. You pay taxes in the end. And then the Roth IRA, you elect to preload your tax payment and pay the taxes at your current tax rate and contribute money on an after-tax basis. The theory behind this is that taxes are inherently going to be lower now, so paying them now as opposed to later is a good financial decision. Not necessarily for everyone, but it is something that you definitely need to take a look at. We also offer SEP IRAs. Any type of former employer plan can typically be rolled into some type of an account that we have. Simple IRAs, individual 401k plans, education savings accounts, and health savings accounts can all be used for passive investing. If you'd like to invest in any type of asset, so long as it's not a prohibited asset, which we'll get to in a few moments, the ability for you to do that is maintained in all these different types of plans. So just because maybe you don't have an IRA, maybe you just have an HSA, or you have a solo 401k, you can do these kind of investments to generate passive income with any of these types of plans. So just understand, if you don't have necessarily an IRA, it doesn't automatically preclude you from being able to invest in this manner. So for 2020, and really most of these contributions that are displayed for you right now, the ability to make a 2019 contribution has already lapsed, with the exception of the SEP IRA. The SEP IRA, if you have filed a corporate extension, you are still able to make your SEP IRA contributions, but you got to get that done by Thursday, is the 15th for the extended corporate deadline. Or if you have a solo 401k, you can still make your employer contribution to that. A part of your net operating income profit sharing contribution can still be made up until your extended filing deadline for the previous year. But for current year, and I'll read these off just as I'm not sure if everyone is looking at the screen with me, traditional and Roth IRAs are both still at $6,000 or $7,000 depending on your age. That has not changed. None of the tax laws that have come out, such as the Secure Act or President Trump's tax amendments that happened back in 2017, have really had any bearing or change on the contribution limits for anything. So the good news is that your contribution limits and other types of ability to utilize these plans have escaped relatively unchanged from all of the legislative proposals and laws that have been passed. So again, $6,000 or $7,000 for a traditional or Roth. A SEP IRA, you can contribute up to 25% of your total compensation, which is going to be less the amount that you pay for self-employment tax if you're self-employed. So you have to use the number that is less those types of taxes already being netted out. For that simple IRA, I would just encourage someone to call if you're curious about that. Solo 401ks again remain unchanged. $19,500 is your contribution limit if you are just taking money out of your own personal paycheck as an elective deferral of compensation to that plan, and you also get a $6,500 bump if you're over 50. And then the portion that you can still contribute to a 401k for last year is the 25% employer match of the net operating income to that plan. ESAs are going to be $2,000 per year per child, and health savings accounts, which I will be teaching a class on at the end of this month to coincide with the beginning of open enrollment for the Affordable Care Act. If you are buying on a marketplace plan, is $3,550 for the individual and $7,100 for family, and you get a $1,000 catch up if you're over 50. So those are some really good ones to keep in mind. Again, just wanted to kind of read those contribution limits off for people that might not have a video in front of them. Oh, okay. So Ted's asked, what are prohibited assets for each? So prohibited investments, we're going to cover here in a slide in a minute. I believe it will fully answer your question, Ted. There really isn't going to be any delineation between a prohibited investment from one type of an account to another. It is a blanket prohibited investment, either structure or type of investment for any type of qualified plan. So anything that's up here on the screen right now will have the same exact rules applied to them. There's not one account that can do something that another one cannot. So what kind of assets, when we're talking about passive investments and mailbox money, are really going to be best for you? A lot of people, when people think of the term mailbox money, you're most of the time going to be circling back to something that's real estate related. And that's what we're going to focus on today. Some type of investment that you place your money into and then it returns a certain rate of return without you having to do much in the way of actual interaction or direct involvement with the investment. If you buy a house, then you're going to rent it out. That's pretty much it. The renters pay you the rental fee, and then if there's any repairs that need to be made to really get the full benefit of mailbox money, I would recommend having a property manager do it, and also with an IRA definitely will help you in that regard as well. But there isn't one prescribed method for what you're actually going to be doing. If you feel that you want to make a passive investment, it can be really into any type of asset that you feel would be passive enough to qualify, and some of them are listed up here. So you can buy a single family home, you could use it as a long-term rental, you can do a short-term rental depending on where you live in the United States. We are located here in Largo, Florida, which is Pinellas County, part of the Tampa Bay area, and we have plenty of clients that use things like VRBO and Airbnb for their properties, and some of them do extremely well with that. So it doesn't necessarily have to just fall into a rental property that you're going to have a single family home be attached to it, that you're going to have year-long leases every time. You can really make it work well depending on the location if you can use a short-term or vacation rental type of platform to help generate more of that passive income for you. Now, you can also rehab. Rehabs definitely are not as passive as just buying a kind of turnkey rental property. But if that's something that you're interested in doing, the availability is for you as well. Condos, mobile homes, parks, tax deeds or tax certificates. And what a tax certificate is that any type of municipality, so your counties that assess taxes will, if there are unpaid property taxes on a property for X amount of time, they will sell that debt for someone else to collect. So you go to the courthouse steps, you can bid on these, and then you will pay a certain rate of return once the individual is making their tax payments. You get to collect on that because you have essentially bought that debt off the rolls of the applicable county that you live in. Pretty cool stuff. We have taught a few different webinars on how to do that, but that is a really interesting passive investment because past just buying it, you're not doing anything, past just collecting the money. So a pretty cool way to do it. Now, real estate investment trusts or REITs, they're a pretty popular one with the more traditional investing side of things. So if you are utilizing a larger brokerage such as a Fidelity or a Charles Schwab, that's really the only type of real estate investment you can get involved in. The problem with real estate investment trusts is although they are very passive, meaning that you don't have to do any day-to-day interaction with the actual investment just to get a return on your money, they are highly illiquid and sometimes they are restricted from being sold. So you may not have a market to get out of that investment if you'd like, as opposed to buying real estate directly. You will be able to take those funds at that time, and then if you'd like to sell it, there's almost always still a viable market to sell a tangible piece of real estate. And then some people like to get into larger multifamily deals, such as investing in apartment buildings or large commercial projects. Those are typically done through some type of syndication or a private placement, meaning that you buy into a private entity such as an LLC, a limited partnership, and then that entity will actually make the investment, and there will be some type of rate of return written into the subscription agreement for that particular investment. Yes, Anthony, the presentation is recorded. All right, now let's move on. Paper assets. Now, these are really going to be what falls into the best fit for people that are looking for really hands-off investing. Mortgage loans or lending really is kind of one of those things where once you've put the money out to work, you literally are just waiting every month for a paycheck, for a check to come in. It is the embodiment a lot of times of what people are referring to with mailbox money. There's an agreement to repay, and then the borrower is just responsible for making those payments back to you. If it's a mortgage loan that's secured by real estate, you are not responsible for making tax payments. You're not responsible for upkeep of the property or anything else like that. That's the owner. You are just responsible for collecting the debt the debt payments that are made back to your IRA in that regard. Let's see. We got a good question. Do you see many people buying self-storage operations? Uh, there was a I will say this is that self-storage facilities they were kind of popular a few years ago with some clients that they had that there were a few private placements that were buying them and people were buying into them as such as kind of a limited partnership deal. I don't see as many now. I don't know if the market's just cooled off on them, but we certainly have seen them. And the few that I have seen that have gone through, clients are still invested in them. They seem to be doing well. So yeah, certainly, if there is the ability for you to get involved in a self-storage unit or a self-storage facility, yeah, absolutely. We can definitely make that work. It's just a matter of, if the deal makes sense for you personally in your IRA. That's kind of not for us to say, but it is a very, very viable type of investment. We kind of touched on tax liens and tax deeds, but if you want to lend someone money, it doesn't necessarily have to be a first position mortgage. It can be a second position mortgage. It can be an unsecured personal loan to that person, so long as they're not a disqualified individual, which we'll get into here in a moment. So if you want to do that type of lending, you're absolutely able to do so. However, keep in mind that if there is no security past just the individual's willingness to repay that debt, then it inherently is a more risky endeavor for you to pursue. Now, I've seen people do pretty well with these, but I would say as far as investments that I have seen people have the most trouble with would be unsecured lending. It kind of goes without saying that if just there is no recourse past just trying to get money out of the person that already can't or isn't paying you, then there certainly is something to be said for that. So I just like to make sure people understand that if you want to do lending as the way that you like to generate passive income, you can really do it in any form or fashion that you feel is going to be beneficial to your IRA. But keep in mind that there might be some inherent additional risks depending on if you decide to go without having collateral to that loan. Option contracts, assignments, joint ventures. You can even buy accounts receivable. If you've ever gotten a call from a debt collector, those companies are ones that go out and buy accounts receivable from companies and then collect on that debt. You can do that with an IRA. However, that's definitely a more active type of investment. It's not something that is going to just generate that mailbox money for you. It's going to be something that you're going to be significantly more involved with. And then there's just kind of the catch-all of other. Now, I leave this up here just for the purpose of making sure that people understand all of the options that are available to them. Most of the things on this are going to be a little bit more active investments. You can be involved in partnerships, depending on what your level of involvement is with your IRA. May or may not be a very passive investment. We've had clients invest in financing of movie projects, equipment leasing, Forex accounts. Those are definitely a lot more hands-on. Private stocks, commodities, oil and gas. If you can think of it, it typically can be worked into some type of investment for your IRA that is as passive as you would really like to make it. Okay, now we're going to get into a little bit of the questions I was asked a little bit earlier with regards to allowable and non-allowable investments. So there are certain types of things that you can't directly buy with an IRA. You can't buy a life insurance policy, meaning that your IRA can't go out and buy a policy that it's directly the beneficiary of, because it's always paid tax-free and kind of creates a tax shelter loop, if you will. Collectibles, you can't buy anything with any type of retirement plan that derives its value from collectability. So that's things like rare baseball cards or artwork or bottles of wine, things like that, things that aren't necessarily traded just for a commodity value, that are traded for some type of intrinsic or rare value, or things that you cannot directly purchase. Now, with that said, you can buy some types of gold coins that are traded on their metal value. So if you want to buy precious metals and you'd like to buy currently minted American Gold Eagles, or you'd like to buy Canadian maple leaves, or personally one of my favorites, the Australian golden koalas. I think those are kind of interesting. China also makes a panda bear coin. If you're buying the coins for their inherent content value, you can invest in things like that. Then we have disqualified people. So the life insurance and collectibles are what you have to stay away from in your IRA directly purchasing, and then you can't deal with certain people. So anyone that is considered a disqualified individual, which are going to be your mother, father, son, daughter, or spouse, or anyone that's named as a beneficiary of the actual plan. So if there's a beneficiary of your IRA, let's say it's your neighbor, you can't directly buy your neighbor's house or buy a property from them if they are named as a beneficiary of your account. So those are the people whom you cannot necessarily deal with, and the few things that you necessarily can't buy. Past that, it's kind of open season on figuring out what's going to work best for you. Let's see. We have a question. Excuse me. Can you help with finding CPAs that have expertise in alternative investing for retirement funds? I can't find any in the Sarasota area. Yeah, I can certainly give you some referrals of people that have experience in this. My big question to you is that what kind of question do you need answered? It's not always something that you need a accountant to be involved in or a CPA. We can answer most of the questions. If it's more to do with a prohibited transaction or legality question, those people that can offer a firm legal opinion are very scarce, since this isn't a very widely utilized type of tool. But I would say if you have a question, float it over to us first, and then if we can't answer it, I would say then we can look into getting you hooked up with someone that might be able to, as far as a professional capacity. But we know plenty of people in the Sarasota, Bradenton area that are familiar with our services and what our clients invest in that we can put you in touch with. Oh, that's actually a good question. So in the context of that, so it's with regard to removing funds from an active real estate investment. So once you've invested in something, again, remember your whole goal with this is to create passive investments, passive income for your IRA. Now, when it comes time to take those funds out, remember that this is all being done in a tax shelter. So if you'd like to have funds distributed to you, that's when you have to take into consideration whether or not you're going to be paying taxes and at what rate. So anytime you take money out of an IRA, so if the property is generating income, it's going back into the IRA because the IRA owns it. Keep in mind, the IRA owns the actual piece of real estate. So the passive income is all going to be deposited into the IRA. Now, if you'd like to take that money out of the IRA and use it personally, there's a few considerations that you have to look at. One, if it's a traditional IRA, you're going to be paying taxes on whatever you take out. Now, those taxes are not any type of special calculation. What you're going to do is you're going to look at your modified adjusted gross income at the end of the year on your 1040, and then add that 1099-R value into that as money that you received in. Now, on that 1099, you're not going to have any withholding typically taken out unless you elect to do so. So you're going to have to keep in mind that the funds that you take out are going to be fully taxed and potentially kind of be putting you into another tax bracket depending on how much you take out and how much you personally make in that given year. Now, here's kind of a good illustration of an infographic of whom exactly is and is not disqualified from investing with your IRA. Now, that's not to say that you cannot partner with these people at the same side of the closing table, but you cannot directly buy or sell anything to one of these individuals. So I can't buy my parents' house with my IRA. I also can't buy an IRA buy a house with my IRA and then rent it to my children. So in general, just dealing with anyone that is in this up and down family tree is going to cause issues and is going to violate IRS rules. Unless you are going to do you're going to partner with them and both going to be in on the deal together as a new investment. Now, the interesting thing is that brothers and sisters are not considered disqualified individuals for the purposes of dealing with them with an IRA. So keep that in mind. If you want to buy your brother's house, you absolutely can. If you want to sell your sister a house out of your IRA, you can absolutely do that as well. Yeah, Nancy, I'm happy to get farther into that. I think it should be some pretty easy questions. If you want to just give me a call after this at 727-754-9954, we can go a little bit into deeper detail on your personal situation on that. But that's definitely questions I can probably answer for you. Okay, so So what are some examples? So selling, exchanging, or leasing property to a disqualified individual, lending money or extending credit to that individual as well. So what that comes into play is that you can't hold a mortgage against your your parents' property. With regard to extending credit, you couldn't necessarily use your IRA as a co-signer on a loan for your children if they're looking to buy a property or they're looking to do something that needs that type of credit extension. And you can also not furnish goods or services or facilities. So if you have a IRA owned property, you cannot allow, let's say, your son's landscaping business to use that property to store equipment, or you could not allow your daughter's business to store inventory in that same capacity. So just keep in mind that it's utilization and transactional based, depending on for disqualified individuals as to what might cause an issue. And then also one thing to keep in mind is that I kind of in-depth covered the disqualified individuals outside of you personally, but you personally are a disqualified individual to your IRA as well. Meaning that if you wanted to, again, if you owned a lawn company, you couldn't store personal equipment in the property that you bought to generate passive income. It has to completely remain segregated from anything you're personally doing. All right, now through the rest of the presentation, I kind of covered the high level stuff, the stuff that is applicable in any type of presentation I do. If there's any questions anyone wants to fire off right now, the next part of it is going to be specific to lending and direct real estate investing with actual examples and everything. So if anyone has any other questions that might be kind of more towards the rules and everything, fire those in now, or again, fire them in whenever. I just like to kind of have a nice transition at this point. So I'll give you a moment to do that. Okay, let's see, we have one from M. Can I transfer funds from an employer-sponsored 401k to a solo 401k? This is a really good question, and it has a few different caveats. So you don't necessarily have to kind of give me the personal rundown, but I'll give everyone the way this works that they know. So you are currently employed by an employer and you have a 401k plan with them. Typically, you're going to be restricted from doing what's called an in-service rollover from that plan while you're still employed, which means you're still eligible to participate in that plan. If for whatever reason you lose your eligibility to participate in that plan, then you are able to typically roll over those funds to a solo 401k or an IRA, or essentially just get those funds outside of that plan. Now, what is an eligibility for that plan? Termination of employment's one, death or disability is another one, and then also reaching the age of retirement generally will allow you to start distributing funds from that, so then you can roll over at that point. The age of retirement typically is seen for 401k and planning purposes as being 59 1/2. So although the answer is typically no, there might be a situation in which you can if you are currently employed to do that. Now, if it's an old plan that you were participating in previously and you have a new job, answer is 100% yes. You can roll those funds out of that plan since you're no longer participating and put them into a solo 401k or an IRA of your choosing. All right, let's get into the types of investments that can be good sources of mailbox money for your IRA. Lending is typically seen as, I hate to say gold standard or anything that would imply that it's a better investment than anything else, but the amount of work that one has to do with regard to lending someone money after the fact of lending them the money really is what makes this such a good option for people that are looking for something very passive. Think about your personal residence when you think about how much work the lender has to do for your home. If you own a home and you have a mortgage, you're responsible for paying those taxes. You're responsible for replacing an AC unit if it goes out, new roofs. Everything that goes through the property is your responsibility to take care of. And what do you do at the beginning of each month? You just write a check to your mortgage company. Now with an IRA, you can act as that mortgage company where you just collect those payments every month and don't have to worry about things like tenants and toilets. So to really have good passive income for an IRA, a lot of people, if that's their goal, will do some type of lending. Now, lending doesn't just fit into one defined box. You can really do whatever you'd like, so long as, again, it's not being issued to a disqualified individual. So what are some of the types of private lending? You can do a traditional first position mortgage, 15, 30-year mortgage for someone. You can do an adjustable rate mortgage. You can do a balloon note mortgage. You can really do whatever is going to work best for you and the borrower. And the nice thing about the flexibility that you have here is that lending is not a one-size-fits-all investment. You might have someone that needs to get some transactional funding, some short-term funding, and doesn't necessarily have the want or the need to put up a residence or a property as collateral if they only need something very short-term. I've also seen people that will do funding closings, where if there's some type of negotiated additional funds that need to be provided at closing, and the seller does not have the funds in order to do whatever is needed, whether that is something found with an inspection of a roof, or let's say there's a plumbing issue. I've seen people that have lent at the closing table, so that way the buyer gets what they need fixed, and then the borrower can repay that as soon as everything closes and they get their money from closing. So again, if you see a niche out there that you want to participate in, and you think that your money can be deployed there well, and to your metrics of what you have as acceptable risk, then go for it. There really isn't any right or wrong way to structure a note if it works well for you, and by extension, your IRA. Now, we mentioned unsecured promissory notes earlier. Now, keep in mind that if you want to do this, yes, is it allowable? Is it something that is going to carry a high degree of additional risk? Absolutely. The reason is that if the person fails to repay the debt, meaning that if they borrowed, let's say, $50,000 from your IRA and they stop paying, the only thing that your IRA can do to recover, and that you can do for your IRA to recover, is have your IRA sue them for non-payment on that note. You can't, as with a mortgage, foreclose on the property that secures the actual loan, because there isn't any security past their good faith word that they're going to repay that debt. So keep in mind that if that's something you want to do, you can certainly do it. Typically, we see people charge a pretty good premium on their money for it to be unsecured, meaning that if you lend someone a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, the interest rate that you're going to be receiving is going to be inherently much less than if it's a unsecured note, because you want to make sure with that additional risk becomes an additional return on your investment. And then you can have secured lending really be by anything. We've seen farm equipment, livestock. I've even seen breeding rights to cattle as a security to a note. Now, are those the most common, or will those kind of things work for everyone? Absolutely not. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that if you understand a certain type of industry, and you understand what people are doing and how to make money in it, use that knowledge in order to help your IRA invest in stuff that can be very low engagement, so not something that you have to constantly go out and look at every day, and also something that can make money for you. Now, equity participation can be a very passive investment, and you're not doing the work on these properties, but it is something cool that I've seen a lot more with the increase in property values and property prices, meaning that in lieu of getting a fixed rate of return, so let's say 8% on your money that you lend someone, in the note you'll indicate that at the sale of the property, your IRA will receive back a certain percentage of the profits that are received at the sale. This is really great because typically with lending, although it is very passive and you have very low exposure to active investing activities, you don't get to enjoy the appreciable price gain in a property. So if a property goes from being worth 100,000 to 180, the owner gets to reap all of the benefit of the increase in the equity value of the property. The IRA as the lender just gets back their underlying basis principal, and that's it. So equity participation allows you to kind of capture some of that value increase that you might otherwise miss if you weren't doing that type of loan. So again, any type of loan that you can think that would work for a particular situation can and typically does work with an IRA. The other nice thing about notes specifically is that you get to make all of the terms of that note. You get to write your own ticket for the investment. You get to determine how much you're going to lend out. You get to determine what your rate of return, your interest rate is actually going to be on that note. You get to say how long it's going to take the individual to repay it. If there's any equity participation terms, you get to put those in there. You get to choose the payment date and the delivery of where those funds are going to be sent. So for some people that really want a lot of tight control but actually don't want to be involved in the day-to-day of an actual investment, this is why notes are so fantastic. You get to literally, just like as if you were to go to a buffet, pick exactly what goes on your plate. You get to know exactly what's going to go in that note, and you can negotiate that with the borrower. You know, you get to not only put what you want in there, but also what the borrower wants to make it a good, beneficial relationship between you and the actual person that is going to be taking your money and repaying it back to your IRA. You get to make sure it's a good fit for everyone, which inherently will help it be a much more beneficial relationship down the road, and helping them be able to make payments by making a note that works well for both parties. And again, I just like to put this up here for people that maybe want a little bit more of an informational basis. These are some of the benefits of it. And again, it can be very low maintenance assets, meaning that you're not paying to put on roofs to the properties, you're not paying to redo plumbing and everything. And it's a lot easier to partner funds together between yourself and other people and other IRAs, maybe even disqualified individuals, to make a larger note happen. So keep that in mind, is that if you'd like to partner individuals or have one large note lent out to a single individual, partnering together with other IRAs or other people can be done. You can partner your IRAs with other people that have taxable entities, like maybe someone's personal LLC, or if they have a trust, or if you just want to do it personally, or even another IRA. You can partner together to make those types of deals happen a lot easier than you can if you were just buying real estate directly. So it's a good thing to keep in mind, especially with the aspect of partnerships. Now, buying real estate. The process of buying real estate within an IRA is not diametrically opposed to, it's not something that is in opposition to what you do personally. The process really is the same. If you personally identify that property, you negotiate the term of the actual purchase. The only real main difference in the process of buying property within an IRA versus personally is that everything's done in the name of the IRA. We're signing everything. The proof of funds, if you need one, is coming from the IRA. And then all of the funds for the actual purchase are coming from the IRA as well. Now at close, just as if you were to buy property personally, those rental checks come in every month, go directly back into the IRA. So just keep in mind that if you're going to be buying property, everything is in the name of and is funneled through the IRA. We need to sign that contract. We need to sign the settlement statement. The property is in the name of the property deed is in the name of the IRA. And just as with the aspects of private lending, you get to choose everything else that goes into this. You get to choose who rents the property. You get to determine your metrics for qualification. Now, keep in mind there are a lot of rules and regulations, whether that's state or federal, with regards to how you can select your tenants, what it means to qualify. There's discrimination rules that you have to follow, but for the most part, it is you getting to determine those metrics. Now, with regards to the terms, the IRA is going to be signing that lease. If you have any issues, I recommend people that are using IRAs to use a third-party property manager. It's going to make your life a lot easier. It's going to help keep you at arm's length more from the property, and especially if you're looking for mailbox money, if you're looking for that passive income, not having to be actively involved with the asset, a property manager is going to be invaluable in that aspect of just being able to help you not have to be woken up at 2 in the morning for a toilet. If you really want to have it be truly passive, a property manager is going to help very much with that. Let's see. We have someone. Can you offer any insights on how Advanta clients find people, investors that need short-term transactional funding and equipment leasing funding? I wish I could. In all honesty, with that question, it's the network that the client already has is where they find it. We don't get involved in necessarily putting together people to actually invest together. However, it does kind of segue nicely into a little bit of a promotion for something else we do for our company. While I don't necessarily have a place that I can give you to go, that would maybe just be kind of like a investment board. We do host every 2 weeks our Pitch, Promote, and Prosper web series, where it's a Zoom call that we invite everyone that is a client or non-client, and anyone's invited to attend, that has had roughly about 70 to 120 people on it every other week, where people are allowed to pitch their investments that they have. They're allowed to promote the things that they're looking to buy or sell. So if you're looking to kind of connect with someone, our clients absolutely do this, and the likelihood that someone that's on there that might be able to help put you in touch with or actually sell you something that is falling within those kind of transactional funding or maybe equipment leasing realms is pretty good. So I'd recommend that you check that out. We just had one last week, so the next one will be the following week from this week. They're on Fridays from about 12 till we normally wrap them up around 2, but they're great discussions. Again, about 75 to 120 people are all in on them, and we let everyone get up and pitch. You get a minute to pitch, and then there's open discussion afterwards. Now, managing the property. Now, again, this is why that when people think passive investment income, loans are such a popular choice. Now, you can mitigate this obviously with having a property manager, but you cannot do the work yourself. Now, you can step into the place of a property manager by coordinating contractors to come and do the work, but that kind of gets out of the realm of having that great mailbox money, of being able to just sit back and have your IRA collect return on your investment. So that's why, a property manager to coordinate and take care of all this will definitely be a big help. But who can do the work? Let's say you don't want to use a property manager. You can't go in and fix the plumbing yourself. You can't go out and do something like mowing the grass. It has to be done by a third party. Now, if you'd prefer not to pay the additional fees that are associated with a property manager, you can certainly coordinate everything else that needs to be done, go out to the property, look what's wrong, and then coordinate with the correct individuals that can come out and fix it. And then any of those expenses would just be paid directly by the IRA. If you're a new client, Julie, you'll absolutely receive that, so long as that you did not opt out of our marketing emails. Or you can just go on our website and register as well. It's under our events tab, so you can go directly there and register and kind of just do it before you get the email. The registration is up for that one. Let's see, we have another question. Can your IRA partner with your personal money? Yes. So although you are disqualified from buying or selling something to your IRA directly, so if you own a personal rental property, you can't sell or assign that property into your IRA. But let's say you have a new property coming up and you don't have enough money in your IRA, or you don't want to use the entirety of your IRA to purchase it. Yeah, you can absolutely partner with yourself personally. You can partner with yourself personally on the same side of the closing table. Now, keep in mind that you cannot buy yourself out or buy your IRA out at a later date. Those percentages of interest on the deed are going to be set in stone at that time. Now, I won't get too far into it, but the correct legal way to do a partnership with yourself personally on a property without using an LLC is what's called a tenant in common purchase, where the defined percentages of interest are actually listed on that deed directly. Okay, so let's look at a little bit of a case study, and then we'll get this thing wrapped up. We have about 10 more minutes, so it'll take us right on time to get y'all out of here and back to your day. If you have any questions, a few moments for that. So in this case, Paul has $120,000 in an IRA and wants more consistent terms on the rate of return for his money. Paul meets a private mortgage broker who can place his IRA funds into a first mortgage with a qualified borrower. So it's really important that if you're going to be lending to someone that is going to be an owner occupant, that you make sure it's originated through a mortgage loan originator. There's a lot of rules, especially with Dodd-Frank, the legislation that came out of the financial crisis in 2007 and 8. If you're going to be lending to someone that actually lives in the property, but if you're lending to just an investor that's going to buy a property and it's secured by that, a lot less regulation. But in this case, Paul is going to be lending to someone that is going to be the owner occupant of the property. He does all of his vetting. He gets with the mortgage broker. And the terms they come up with for the loan are $120,000, an 8% interest rate with a 5-year balloon, and a monthly payment of $800. So what happens to make this deal happen? First, Paul needs to open an Advanta IRA account. Then he's going to find that loan and analyze the terms. He's going to make the offer of what exactly is going to be involved in the loan, and then he needs to inform us after he has the initial negotiations done that he's going to be funding this loan. From that point, the account manager at Advanta will reach out to, will reach out to the individual that's going to be drafting the loan documents to provide them with all of the information for the IRA of how to title it, how our procedure works. Once we get all of those documents, Paul simply disapproves them through our DocuSign portal, and then we in turn will then send everything out. If there is anything that needs to be signed for the IRA, typically there isn't in a loan, but if there is, we will sign it and then also send the wire out to the escrow or the attorney that's handling it. And then the investment's completed. And then every month thereafter, he should get a check into his IRA for that $800. And then after 5 years, the balloon payment comes due and he'll get all of that $120,000 back as well. All right, we have a question. I may have missed this earlier, but if I put an LLC inside my IRA and get a tax deed property with a partner through the LLC, the deed doesn't have to have the IRA's name on it, does it? So if you are going to be utilizing an LLC, or what people like to call checkbook control within an IRA, the IRA inherently is not going to be on any type of purchase documentation with regards to that tax deed, the deed of a property, a note, whatever it happens to be that you're actually investing in. It's going to be in the name of the LLC. The IRA needs to be titled on the operating agreement to show the actual ownership of the entity, which that is all a relatively simple process. I don't want to eat up much time on that here. We do have plenty of webinars on that topic, or if you'd like to call me and I can go through the finer details of it, please feel free to give me a call. I'm happy to go through that with you as well. But to simply answer your question, the IRA's name is not on the tax deed in that particular situation. Okay, now we're going to look at purchasing property. It's going to be a lot like buying a piece of, or it's going to be a lot like investing in a private note or mortgage. So in this case, John had a 401k from a previous employer and he wants to purchase rental property down the road from his house. A lot of us, if you live in a neighborhood, you'll see a house for sale. I know there's one a few doors down in my neighborhood that I would really like to purchase as well. They want a little bit too much money for it, but the key is that you can look and find these deals literally in your own backyard. If you're interested in investing in property, the likelihood that most people here are living somewhere where they can, kind of walk around and find property, it's probably pretty great. Now, in this case, he wants to buy that house down the road from him with an old 401k. So he's going to need to open and fund a new IRA account here with us. So in this case, he'd probably open up a traditional IRA. He already found that property. He made an offer to purchase it. And once the offer to purchase it's accepted, that's when you need to involve Advanta. So you give your account manager a call. We would make sure that the contract is titled correctly. We'll make sure that the deed and everything else is correctly titled and done, so that way the purchase of it will be done in a manner that will secure the property to the IRA and follow all of the rules as well. So once the documents are ready, John will approve them. We will wire the funds out to the closing, and then Advanta will hold the deed for that property, and any type of rental income for that property is going to be collected by the IRA. Now, what exactly is the strategy here? So the property is rented at $1,200 for 2 years, which is $28,000. Again, no tax on any of that. Then after a few years, John decides to sell the property for $170,000. Now remember, he bought it for $120,000, so he's going to sell it for $170,000, so that's a $50,000 profit. Again, that's not taxable. And then no taxes are paid on the $78,000 in profit. And now he has the ability to take $198,000 of completely untaxed money and then reinvest it into another type of asset. Now, again, that's maybe not the most passive way to do things. You could certainly hold that, and that $1,200 a month of rent would continually accrue. And really the only expenses that you would knowingly have for that would simply be insurance and taxes. So past that, if the property is in good shape and you don't have any repairs, all of that money is going directly back into your IRA, completely tax-free, with very little engagement from you as the individual for that actual investment. So that's what I have for you today. I think we're hitting right up on 12 or 1 o'clock. If anyone has any questions, I'll stick around until we have about 10 people left. Again, please make sure that if you are interested in looking for someplace to find deals, our Pitch, Promote, and Prosper event is held every other Friday. Coming up next Friday is the next one. So again, I'll stick around here for a few minutes. If there's any questions, go ahead and fire those in and we'll get them taken care of. The link to the event, if you go to advantaira.com, it's on our events tab. It's in the middle of the page. You just click events and it'll take you to where you can register for that event. All right, I think that's all the questions. Thank you very much for everyone for attending and have a great rest of your day.